Hello and welcome to the SupNerd podcast. We are on episode 2. I'm your host, Victoria Cheng, and here we talk about gaming, nerd culture, and everything in between. We do have a video version of this podcast available on YouTube and MeWatch. Do check the links below in the description. Now let's get into this week's episode. We're going to talk about games that have survived through time and the games that have defined us. Today, we've got our SupNerd crew. We've got Carlo and Kim joining us here today.
What's up?
They can see you, so you can wave.
I know. I'm waving. Hello.
All right. So let's jump into it. I know we do have some crossover game interests, but let's talk about the games that have really survived through time. The titles that are still there. They're still huge, even since we were kids. Street Fighter, for example, would be one of them. Or right. Pokemon, starting from cards and the game keeps evolving through time. We talked about it in episode 1. You guys can watch that or listen to it if you want to hear more about what Pokemon is doing today. Yeah, so games that have survived through time.
Cool.
I mean, I was having a conversation with Kim on the way here, and he mentioned Doom, and I thought I was really interested in hearing about that because I didn't even realize there was a modding scene. So
yeah. OG Doom, there's been a whole bunch of remasters and there's a whole bunch of reboots and stuff like that with Doom Eternal and whatnot. But the OG modding scene hasn't stopped, and I've got Doom on my phone and I still play it. So as testament to a game from 94 or whatever, to now, it's definitely stood the test of time in terms of something that's not just influential, but
Doom is a great one, and I love that it's still alive and it's just gotten better.
Yeah,
which is great, because you have a lot of the Nintendo games that have survived through time as well. All the characters that have, come back in many different forms and iterations. But Doom holds a special place in my heart.
Yeah, and I think another one from childhood probably is the original StarCraft, right? That never died. I mean, even after StarCraft 2 came out, a lot of the pros still wanted to play StarCraft because it had a bit of better balance, and it just felt better from gameplay perspective. I didn't actually like StarCraft 2 very much. I think another one, I guess...
Weirdly, I agree, by the way. I actually prefer...
They're both so good.
They're both good. Oh, actually, I should have brought this up in episode 1, but StarCraft, I think what I really like about RTS games are the campaign modes, and I think that's what made me really love StarCraft, were actually the campaign modes of those two games. But I think it's also interesting that you say it's survived through time. There are only 2 of them. Well, I guess including the expansions, but it survived effectively because of esports, because it's become a competitive gameplay.
StarCraft 1 got remastered, and then that started an entirely new league of StarCraft 1 players.
Yeah.
So all the OG guys came back and started playing that again, and that renewed interest in StarCraft as an esport. It's phenomenal to me that something like that can happen, because it's so old. It's stuff still glitches out, and knowing the ins and outs of those glitches is what made that esport so interesting at the time, and now, really.
Yeah, it's something that, like I said just now, it's still played, right? And that kind of amazes me, especially with the fact that so many other RTSs have come out ever since. I mean, another one that stood the test of time is probably Age of Empires 2, right? Which actually is interesting because Age of Empires 4 came out, last week?
Yep.
So I haven't slept because I play that every day for the last 4 days.
How is it?
But it's great and it's fun, but it feels different. It feels a little bit dumbed down in terms of micromanagement and things like that, and you can actually see people fighting on the forums and on the subreddits going, yo man, this is too easy, this is too dumb, why can't my mangonel have friendly fire? Then that means nobody has to micro properly anymore, everybody can just be a noob. And I'm just like, damn, people still play a game like AoE 2. And they take this stuff seriously, and you're like, why, man? Just I suck at games these days compared to when I was younger, right? My micro's not as fast, my APM's not as fast, so I'm like, let me play the dumbed down new version. I'm having a good time with this.
But that's why they were differentiated. Like that's what differentiated
for sure.
them from, like, because they could kill a boar 4 pixels from the stupid town center or whatever, and that would increase whatever. Like, it was interesting to see that, like, that's the epitome, in my opinion, like, of an RTS that is just, you know, levels of different players.
Well, I think that's why a lot of the classic titles also stand the test of time, because they make stuff easier now.
Yeah.
Which is good when people like us are older and don't have as much time.
I got something on that.
Like,
But, you know, games were harder. It's
Hell
not
yeah.
just StarCraft and...
World of Warcraft, WoW, is still alive. I don't know. I mean, I don't play it anymore, but with all the expansions that keep coming out, it has definitely been simplified exactly to that point. And I wonder if that's been helpful in keeping that game alive.
I don't think so, to be honest, because I played Shadowlands, and I mean, I talked to you about this at length, like in December. It's the shortest time I spent playing an expansion. Like, I usually play at least 4 to 6 months, right?
Do you ever play Classic anymore?
No, because I don't have the time to invest like when I was in college and had nothing to do with my time.
Yeah.
You know, I was
Exactly.
like overweight, Mountain Dew drinking, chip eating boy in Australia, living in Sydney, literally in front of my computer, not sleeping all the time. But the difference is with like WoW now with Shadowlands, I only played 5 weeks because there's no sense of reward. It's like you can get all the best gear just running Mythic Pluses and stuff. Nothing looks different. And you're just in the same gameplay loophole, and there's no community. That's what's missing as well. Like back in the day, even you had server communities for MMOs. You made friends online playing StarCraft and other games like that. Because you were like, you play someone good, you're like, let's play 2v2 against someone. Now it's kind of just like, I don't know, you go away. We're done. Just get out.
Did you want to say something about that? Otherwise, I'm going to move on to the next topic.
No, I think that, like, the ease of games and how that's kind of transitioned into our daily lives, especially given COVID has kind of made everybody gamers. Like, having the Switch out is kind of poignant because that has enabled a lot of people to get into games, as well as rebooted a lot of old games. You know, like OG Doom can be played on a Switch, you know, and that's... Like, Doom Eternal can be played on a Switch, which is phenomenal. You know, like, it plays all these retro games and things that I've enjoyed during my childhood. Like, Streets of Rage is now, has been rebooted and now is on a Switch. And it means that I can rip out the controllers, throw one to Carlo, and we can play that stuff.
I told you.
We can play that together on this amazing console, you know, and all of these. It's funny that you brought up Nintendo as one of the forerunners for having all of these different IPs and franchises that have kind of stood the test of time. But like what they're doing now with that is incredible, because they're bringing all the stuff that we were into back into the front, and new like kids playing this, which is
and it's crazy
really cool to see.
They like it. They really love it.
Yeah.
I remember,
sure.
loading up just, OG Kirby, and my 5-year-old niece really loves it. N64 games are now going to be available on the Switch. I know that's caused a bit of backlash based on pricing, but I have to say N64 also holds a special place in my heart from high school days. I liked a lot of the games back then. Zelda is another game that has stood the test of time and has come out with so many different iterations of the game. But yeah, Ocarina of Time is definitely one of my all-time favorite console games to this day.
Yeah, and all playable on the Switch. Well, soon to be playable on the Switch, which is, it's an accessible, easy way to get old gamers back into gaming and introduce a whole bunch of new gamers to all the stuff that we used to play. And like you said, like the whole pixel art aesthetic that like I grew up with is now, again,
it's a thing now.
Thing.
People are making new games with pixels.
Exactly. And not only is it a thing, people like it, you know, and it's just so cool to see that, like, yeah, this is something that has become an art form based on a limitation of that age, which is money.
Just to play devil's advocate, do you think people like it because it's retro and it's cool to be a nerd now and to be a geek Do you think that's why there's any, do you think that's why it's trendy? Or do you think it's a genuine love
Me?
for it? Yeah,
I
just
mean,
curious about your opinions.
I think it's a mix of the two. It is trendy to look at retro stuff, which pisses me off because it makes me feel old. Because I was younger when
Retro.
all these things came out. I mean, we were around when the Nintendo, the Famicom was out, right? But I think there's a lot of new games coming out that use pixel art, but shine because of gameplay. It's just showing that it's actually showing that video games don't need to have $50 million, $100 million development budgets to be fun and to be replayable. So I think it's a mix of the two, but I think I'm leaning more toward them actually being fun. Like people understanding that these are enjoyable things, especially in times like COVID, like we can't really go outside or do anything, right? So yeah.
Okay, so we kind of know. I mean, you can kind of tell people's age group based on the games they grew up with. One of my very first games ever was Asteroids. I mean, we had those really old computers back in the house. What games do you think are defining kids today? Like, what's gonna be, really leave that mark when they're our age, and what's gonna define the future of games? Because it's like, if you think about it, games have changed so much. Like what was available back then, we had your arcade games. You had, eventually like RTS games came into play. There, different types of games started evolving, but now we have MOBAs. We have why am I blanking out? What other games do we have today that did not exist back then? Minecraft.
Yeah, survival games weren't a thing back then.
Survival games,
Roblox.
yeah. Or a story like these really heavily narrative-driven games. I think to the level they are now, definitely didn't exist back then. Like it's a little bit different than role-playing games. It's almost like a cinematic experience game. But sorry, I saw some hand signals.
Oh
yeah,
battle royales.
Yeah,
like
battle royales.
Fortnite.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on battle royales. I'm still salty about all the cheaters in Warzone, but but that's true. So I would say that the two genres of games that would really define this generation. So we're talking kids born 2000 and over, right? Because we're just that old now, I guess.
Yeah.
Would be MOBAs and BRs. Because MOBAs, I mean, like Dota started off as was it WARCRAFT 3 mod, right?
Yeah.
Or
No, exactly.
but then that plus League of Legends now are probably two of the most highly played games in the world. I think I can't remember the name of it right now, but the most played mobile game in the world is mobile game is a MOBA as well. And I only know about that because apparently they're doing like a full RPG sort of spin off of it. And then it's BRs. Like if a kid's a gamer these days, especially if they're like probably between the age of like 8 to 16, they're probably into one of those two genres at least. On top of the things that came during our time, like FPSs, MMOs, and all that.
I'd add to that list Minecraft. I think that like what you were saying is basically kids these days have they're spoiled for choice with all these different types of games and all these different genres and genre bashing. There are games coming out now that are mixing RTS with FPS. And that's just so cool. You know, but like when it comes to what is defining kids these days, we can all talk about like how Fortnite is, it's played by kiddos and whatnot. But what Minecraft did for a lot of children, it did for me. Like, and I grew up with Lego and I grew up with, building things. It allowed them to build worlds and build them together with their friends and build them on any device that they own. Like you can play it on literally anything, like you can play it on calculators now. But like the ability to do that with your friends, and kind of create, not just like play, but also create, explore, and stuff like that, is something that I thought was monumental for that next gen, because that also, like you said, it defined a whole new subculture of this genre of survival, which has become one of my favorite, genres as well.
Yeah, because I agree. Because I personally have never really played Minecraft, but I play the hell out of survival games now.
Exactly.
Like Age of Conan and games like that. Like I fell in love with the act of being able to build, and I think a game like Minecraft got so big because made even parents realize that there are games that will encourage their kids' creativity.
For sure.
Because I don't play Minecraft, but I look at some of the stuff they made. I'm just like, damn.
Yeah.
I can't even think of that.
There are kids that have grown up to be electrical engineers based on stuff in Minecraft. So using redstone and stuff like that to create. Redstone it's basically like a circuit.
Yeah.
And so you can create an entire working calculator or a working computer in Minecraft, which is, we can save that for another geek out session, but like it is so phenomenal because it's literally just a switch that will change a number that will be an analog calculator, which is, it's mind blowing. And these kids, they watch YouTube, and they watch these tutorials, and that's how they learn. It's not just schoolyards and stuff like that. They've got unlimited amounts of knowledge for games like this, and just being able to apply that is good for them.
I think the fact that most games can be online, or like you said, they have so endless resources online, has really changed the playing field for gamers of this next generation. With that said, where do you guys kind of see it going in the future? I know metaverses has been a concept that's been kind of thrown around, VR. Where do you guys think games are headed?
VR's got a long way to go, I think, before it really becomes a mainstream thing. I don't know what direction gaming is going to take from here because we've already gone through so many iterations, right? And the thing is, it's like a lot of stuff doesn't go away. We're just adding options, like Kim mentioned earlier. So like we were talking about, BRs and MOBAs weren't a thing when we were 13 or 12, right? But when our parents were playing video games, like MMOs and FPSs weren't really a thing. It's hard to predict what's going to happen in the future because we're just creating new genres and mixing them up together. And I think that's the future of gaming. It's really taking an RTS and mixing it with an FPS. Taking an MMO and then having like an offline component to it, like maybe like a companion app on the phone. It's hard to say.
I think that direction isn't the right way that I would phrase that because it's more just expansion. And when we talk about what's I guess maybe the next trend, but VR, it's a component. VR is a component of gaming that will always be there, but that's never going to take over like a handheld, for example, or even retro gaming and stuff like that. And that spread and that cross-pollination of all the different genres, I think is the...
Yeah, but I mean, I guess if you just had to take a stab in the dark at what's going to evolve, or what's next. I mean, obviously, games are a constant evolution from previous iterations, like you guys have said. But like, who knows? Or what would you guys want to see make a comeback?
But I don't think that that's obvious. Like, that's what's so exciting. Like, I didn't know. Like, who would have thought that putting 100 people into a room and making them fight would be a thing? And yet that has become like a humongous part,
$1 billion industry.
Yeah, and it's so popular. I don't like it, but I didn't see that trend. So
that actually reminds me of Fall Guys and games like that as well. There you go. These crazy indie games that have ended up just going mad, like wild into the market.
Well, I think that's one direction things are going to go. I think the future of gaming might lie within the indie developers because they've shown, especially in the last 2 years, just how good games are. Yeah. They don't need giant budgets. I mean, Valheim, which was released February this year, blew up over 2 months, right? Sold I think 5, 10, 20 million copies, something like that. Made by 4 or 5 people. It was another game where it was great because it was multiplayer and you could be creative with your friends, but then just fell on the weight of its own expectations because nobody expected it to be that big. And I think it's going to be moving forward. I think that's what's going to be happening. We're going to start seeing a lot of smaller studios, even from around here in Southeast Asia, Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia. I think that's the future.
Just to add to that, so long as the pursuit or the quest or the ultimate goal is always, a game that is fun.
Yeah.
As opposed to a game that makes money. And that's why like indie developers, they're constantly doing that cross-pollination of genres because they're trying to search for the next fun thing.
Yeah.
Which is why it's so exciting to me. Like I think that it's difficult to pin a trend. I mean, I could say what I like and what I think would be great.
And what would that be?
More survival FPS games. That would be rad.
Why don't you play Back for Blood with us?
It's not a survival game.
Yeah, I mean...
Okay, you
yeah.
want like a true survival game. All right.
So that
But
would
it's
be
not
fun.
a-
Like an
yeah.
FPS that sort of had a base that you built on your own as well, but then you still
Exactly.
went out on...
Exactly.
on
Little
missions,
missions.
right?
You can go visit your friends and check out their place. Basically Fallout. But better.
Do you guys have faith in these bigger developers or upcoming AAA titles? Like we know what happened with Cyberpunk and how that played out. Do you think this is also going to be sort of this effect on these bigger developers, where investment interest gets involved?
I mean, I don't distrust developers. I distrust the publishers.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah,
the publisher's role is just to make money.
Exactly.
And that's why Activision rolls out a new Call of Duty every year, sometimes without any good iteration. Which is another reason is why that's why there's so many cheaters on these games, because they're reiterating or building on really, really, really old code.
It's the arcade.
So the cheat guys can just modify stuff and within days have something new. For example, Call of Duty Vanguard. Their big thing is supposed to be an anti-cheat coming out for Warzone December 2.
Yeah.
But they were supposed to start trialing it on the multiplayer version of Vanguard. Literally watched a video on YouTube the other day of a guy shooting people through walls. Like, because they've got wall hacks. So I don't think that publishers really have the interests of the gamer at the heart. They have the interests of the investor at heart, which is what's killing a lot of these even good big studios, because Cyberpunk is a game that could have had a lot of soul, but clearly it was one. I don't believe they started developing it when it was announced, like 6, 7, 8 years ago. I think I believe it when stories came out, it was like 4 or 5 years, and that's not enough time. And it was clearly rushed and it wasn't ready. And plus they lied about the Xbox and PS4 capabilities of handling it. So I think that's what's pushing people towards indie games. Why am I going to spend $80 on a title that might really, really just disappoint me? Or I could spend $15 to $20 on a game that I could play for 5 hours, and I'm getting better dollar value out of that. And I could buy 4 indie games and have fun with them instead of paying $80 for a Call of Duty that might just end up pissing me off.
As it did, yeah.
I think that if the end goal is fun, then no worries. If the end goal is to entertain, if the end goal is to have an emotional response to a game, I think that so long as the game developer and the publisher work towards that simple goal, then we're all good. I'm like a AAA fan because you can, the production value of this is manyfold of a movie or a series. And so the experience that comes with that is equally as entertaining, I guess, to me. And sometimes they don't deliver, and that's on them. It's the same as a bad, big budget movie. But it doesn't stop me from watching them. It doesn't stop me from playing them. That's just how it goes.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that for sure.
Cool. I guess to wrap it up, if there's one game that you guys would like to see make a comeback, what game would that be?
Ooh, that's a toughie.
That's a really hard one.
Yeah.
Like a game that's that might still be alive a little now, but it's really not in its heyday anymore.
Yeah.
I would bring...
Or a game that, doesn't really exist.
I would want to bring the original Ultima Online back.
Oh.
That first came out in 97, before they split it, so there's non-PvP and PvP realms. Because it was fun because it was an MMO, but there was always danger around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Some dude could just show up and kill you and take all your stuff.
Yeah.
And that added to the fun of it, even though I was 13 or 12 when it came out. Actually, I might have been 10.
Nice.
Because it was I think it was
Yeah.
96, 97, right?
Yep, that's about right.
So I feel like there's no sense of that anymore in games these days. Like nobody's like no three griefers can run up and just steal all my stuff. And I'm like, I gotta get more steel. I gotta make new armor. I'm naked. And I would bring something like that back way before they did the expansion, way before they did the ill-advised like 3D version. Like that sort of 96, 97 version of UO, bugs and all. I bring that back in a heartbeat.
Fair enough.
Good one. Yeah.
I was gonna say
I was playing more EverQuest back then than UO, but I don't think I'd bring that back. I think I'd like to see Unreal Tournament really, make a comeback just for nostalgia reasons. Yeah,
you can play that.
I know.
It's like
I know, but you
it's
can
still
play.
an amazing.
I mean, technically, you could play a lot of old games.
Okay,
but it's
but
not
comeback meaning like you
comeback
want it
as
to be
in like
mainstream.
I can.
A remaster or something.
Yeah,
Sure.
And then I guess original, like I would bring back the first Quake.
yeah.
Quake was the
You
game.
can play that.
I know I can play anything now, Kim.
Thanks for the info.
No,
Yeah.
but like Quake was what Quake actually was what got me to fall in love with online gaming, and it was on really crappy dial-up, and I had 300 ping, and I remember it was around the time like here in Singapore when they started. I think Singtel had a service called Magix. It was the first kind of broadband or ADSL they had, so kids would start showing up at 50 ping, and you still mess them up. You're like, ha, you nothing. Your ping doesn't mean anything. I got 320 ping. I'm on 36K dial-up. You suck. So that's what got me sort of into playing and being competitive about games. And then that carried on to things like MMOs. And this is why I still enjoy the odd FPS now and then. And Quake was simple enough that you could pick it up really fast. I mean, you had a rocket launcher, grenade launcher, nail gun, like 4 or 5 weapons. And you just had your power-ups. And, if you're an idiot, you'd shoot the lightning gun when you're in the water and then you kill yourself.
They've actually developed a new
so
game.
awesome.
They've made another game that's kind of similar. These little egg-shaped robots. I can't remember the name of it right now. Yeah. So, how about you?
Yeah, I was gonna say Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like
You could play
I
it.
love.
Did you know that?
I love beat 'em ups. No, but they're remastering it. But there's a game that you can't play at the moment, and it's really obscure. But it's called Dungeon Keeper. And
I love that game.
the thing is, you can't play that on any modern device. And it's the only game that like it's kind of.
There was a DOS game, right?
Yeah,
Right,
it was a DOS
yeah,
game.
it was a DOS game.
Dungeon Keeper 2, basically the premise is that you are a dungeon guy, like you're a dungeon master, and heroes will come into your dungeon and you got to kill them. And it was the first time I've ever played as an evil person.
Yeah.
And you can't play that on modern consoles. There's been remakes, there've been homages.
Yeah, there's an homage series that's pretty good.
Yeah, Dungeons.
Dungeons, right?
Yeah,
but
I got
it's
'em all.
not the same.
It's not the same.
It's like, because I remember in Dungeon Keeper, like, you could sort of just slap your little imps around.
You can still do that in Dungeons, but Dungeons introduce this overworld thing.
Yeah,
so it
yeah.
turns into an RTS, so
Yeah.
you can flip back and forth from
Yeah.
that.
So I didn't
But,
like that. Like, but the original experience, if you build your dungeons and then you're trying to get like heroes to come in and fall into your traps
Exactly,
and die.
exactly. You got all these.
Like I
traps
like
and
that.
stuff.
Plus, there was also Black and White. You remember that?
Yeah,
game?
yeah, yeah.
Like
Black and White is like
before Peter Molyneux lost his mind and promised
Exactly.
everything and just couldn't deliver on anything anymore.
But that was one of those. They mixed humor into it. They
Yeah.
mixed, like all this really cool elements of world building into this idea that you control a god. Or like a kind of giant animal god.
Oh
Yeah.
shoot!
And
oh my
you
god!
feed
I
it and it
played
gets
it.
bigger,
Yeah, yeah.
I had
and
the
then
cow god.
and you
I
can
just
slap
remember
them
you
around,
can kick
you
them.
punch 'em,
you
and then they get, like-
You
oh,
can
I
make
just
them good or you
remember.
can make them bad.
Oh my
yeah,
God.
Black and White and
Yeah.
Black and White too.
Yeah, I
white.
played that.
Yeah.
I don't think I got any progress. I just
You just sit around
I
slapping.
had
around.
an evil cow
Yeah.
god. Yeah, kicked people around.
I guess those are some of the games and genres that kind of died.
Yeah.
Like
I think it's time for a rediscovery of that because
Yeah.
I reckon that people will love Dungeon Keeper, and
Oh, yeah.
there was a mobile game, but it was paid and it
Yeah.
was monetized and stuff like that.
And it's because they were funny as well, right? Like
That's
it was
the thing.
It,
There
it
was
wasn't
that-
stupid. Well, it was stupid humor.
Yeah.
But it was fun, right? And I think that's something that a lot of AAA games are now missing.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly.
They try to be a little too serious for their own good. For
Exactly.
the most
I can
part.
name a whole bunch. No One Lives Forever, Giants, Citizen Kabuto. I don't know if you played any of these games, but
Yeah.
that's an FPS and a third-person shooter, and the FPS you play as a girl. And it's the first time I've ever played, except for Tomb Raider, you're playing as this like 60s spy. And the humor in that, I've never laughed so hard at like a game. And it's not even jokes, it's just funny scenarios that just like, I'd had to pause. No One Lives Forever.
No, I mean, you think these kind of games don't really exist now? I feel like
I haven't laughed
though.
at a game in a very long time.
Borderlands?
That's not that kind of like...
It's not funny enough.
It's like goofy slapstick, you know? But this is just... It's clever because of the writing, and it's just weird for that.
But I think you find things like that now in indie games.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
But you don't find them in AAA
exactly.
anymore.
That's true.
But you were saying AAA.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So...
Yeah. So, yeah. Long list. Many things.
I mean, I feel like we could even go further back into just talking about the progression of games and games that have really touched our lives. But I think that was a good little insight into the games that have made us. So I think that wraps it up for today's episode about the games that have defined us and made us with Carlo, Kim, and myself, Victoria. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of SupNerd. If you want to check out our other episodes, which is only one other episode so far, do follow or subscribe to us on Listen, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts. So if you want to get in touch with us, you can hit us up on our Instagram at supnerd.tv or myself, Victoria Cheng, on Instagram. They have Instagram accounts too, but you can hit them up at supnerd.tv. Yeah, let us know what you want to hear about in some of our future episodes. We're totally down to hear your recommendations. If you want to watch the video, you can catch us on YouTube and MeWatch. Links to those are in the episode description below. This podcast is supported by Mediacorp, so thanks, guys. Once again, I've been your host, Victoria Cheng, and until next time, nerds.
See ya.
See ya.
We need a song.
Cut.